Welcome back to the Rory Talks Football channel, your daily Arsenal news, updates, debates and my opinions. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. We're only about 200 away, so please do help me get there if you can. Smash a like on the stream as well, massively helps me. Lots to get into today. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've had a good day. And let's get into things. So obviously, look, Raya, we had the Here We Go on stream for David Raya yesterday, which was fantastic. What next? What next for Arsenal? Outgoings, mainly, is the answer to that question. Obviously, we're 2 days away from the start of the Premier League. Owen, good to see you. Absolute cack, good to see you as well. So we're only 2 days away. And one thing that I was thinking about today, actually, is just you look around the other fan bases, and they're all wrapped up in transfers. They're all wrapped up, who's the next signing, trying to get deals done here, there, and everywhere. And we're not. And I do think we need to kind of take a step back and just actually, pat Edu and Tim and all the rest of them on the back for the fact that really we've got to a very good position. Ethan, Kian, Jake, Tony, Alex, Funny, Adam, Drakkar, Zelda, good to see you all. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've had a good day. We're over halfway through the week now as well, so that's always a bonus. But yeah, I see United fans. Alex, does the GOAT respond? Well, Bukayo Saka isn't on the stream, but I'm sure he would respond if he was. And look, yeah, like I said, you've got, United are looking at Amrabat and Todibo, and you've got Chelsea trying to get Caicedo and Tyler Adams and every other player under the sun. Who else is that? City, obviously, now in for Lucas Paqueta. And it's just good to be in this position where we're good to go. We don't need any more signings this summer. Ideally, we'd get one more. Obviously, I want Mohamed Kudus. But if we don't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Rory always improving with his new microphone. Well, so interestingly, Melissa, I've always had this microphone. It was just before, it was like way back behind my monitor. But I rejigged it all today, so it's here now. And hopefully, well, let me know. Hopefully the sound quality is better now than it was before. I kind of feel more like a radio DJ. Welcome to your daily Arsenal news. No panic signings from us, like Luiz in 2019. There are so many panic signings. Mikel Arteta himself was a panic signing. And it's great that we're away from that. So, of course, now the focus goes on to outgoings, and we do need to get those outgoings done. But it kind of plays both ways. The fact that other clubs are still trying to get deals done, they become more desperate for the players that we've got outgoing. So Bobo Orolfsson says, Rory, what do you think of Arteta saying he thought of quitting? I think it's very brave and honest of him to acknowledge that. I don't know why he thought of quitting. I honestly don't. But it suggests that he really thought in his head that Arsenal should have won the league last season. If he, that's good mentality to have. But ultimately, he came to the conclusion that he is the best person for the job, and I agree. Holdini said Fabrizio news. Let me see if there's anything new from Fabrizio. We've got some Fabrizio news on other topics in the show today. The latest from Fabrizio. David Raya deal sealed between the clubs. Medical test booked on Thursday. Then he will be unveiled as a new Arsenal player. Now, this is good. So the medical test will be done tomorrow. That means that, in theory, the whole thing will be completed and he'll be a registered player by midday on Friday. According to Connor Hum, Arsenal will need to register David Raya by midday on Friday for him to be eligible to face Nottingham Forest on Saturday. Now, he's not going to start against Nottingham Forest, but you never know what could happen, right? Ramsdale could pick up a freak injury 1 minute into the game, and you need a substitute keeper. And you'd rather have that as David Raya than, I don't even know who it would be, Renarsson or Karl Hein. So there you go. I'm MUFC fans on another account. I know you know who that is. Yeah, nice. It's football. Good. MUFC fans. What are the chances he starts against Forest? No chance. No, he's not going to start against Forest. Absolutely not. It would make no sense. Even if you think he's the better goalkeeper, there are relationships. Ramsdale has a relationship with Saliba and Gabriel, and you have to work on that in training. So, even if you're a believer that Raya is going to come in and start for Arsenal and you think Arteta's bought him absolutely to start and to drop Ramsdale. It still won't happen for a few weeks anyway, because he'll need to learn and adapt to the system. Rory, have you seen Reece James is captain? I didn't see that. Very interesting. I mean, that says a lot about the club. And not in a disrespectful way, but Reece James is one of their most experienced or longest serving players at this point, which is kind of crazy. What do you think of United getting 30 million for Maguire? Scandalous. But look, good for them. Man United have been in the same boat as Arsenal in terms of being a poor selling club. And to get 30 million for Maguire, it's good business for them. It's terrible business for West Ham. And I hope Maguire's got a relegation clause in his contract, because I think West Ham are getting relegated. Rob Holding is better and far more handsome than Maguire. Why haven't we West Ham gone for him? I don't know. It's look, you would think, right? Rob Holding is 3 years younger than Harry Maguire. Now, I'm not saying that Rob Holding's a better player than Harry Maguire. He's really not that much worse. And the fact that we can't seem to get more than 3 or 4 million for Rob Holding, again, we just struggle to sell, and that is the important next part of the transfer window for us. One thing I did want to talk about, Mohamed Kudus is obviously the kind of one player that I still want us in an ideal dream world to sign this season. According to rumours, and these are just rumours from Dutch outlets that are obviously closer to Ajax, but according to Dutch rumours, the hold-up on Mohamed Kudus to Brighton is a release clause issue. Basically, Kudus wants a release clause. He doesn't want to make a gentleman's agreement like Moises Caicedo did and then end up in a position where he can't leave. And look, we've said it a couple of times on this channel. Brighton's behaviour, I think, around Moises Caicedo is damaging for Brighton's long-term ambitions, because clearly there was an agreement in place, and it was only a gentleman's agreement. It wasn't written into any contract, and that's being neglected. A couple of people asking for Botello news, Botello deal. I'm not seeing it. I've not seen anyone significant talking about it, as far as I can see. So I'm not sure. If you've got a source for the Botello news, let me know. There's nothing really that I can see. Saliba, Martinez, Stones, start, bench, sell. Start Saliba. No. Yeah, start Saliba, bench Stones, sell Martinez. Rory, do you understand why Caicedo is so desperate to go to Chelsea? Surely he's better playing in Europe with Brighton than getting a better move next year. Long term. And I don't necessarily think he's desperate to go to Chelsea, per se. I think he's just desperate to leave. It's much like Mudryk. It's very much like Mudryk. Mudryk did all of the twerking for Arsenal and made us think that he was desperate for Arsenal. In reality, he was just desperate to leave. He just wanted to get out of Shakhtar, and he wanted someone to come and pay the money for him. And I think, look, I actually think Chelsea's not a bad project long term. If I'm being, I hate Chelsea, but if I'm being objective, I think they've got a lot of young talent there. And long term, I think next season they're going to be quite poor, but long term, I think there's probably a decent project going on. And if he gets in early, he'll be quite a big part of that project as well. And he's guaranteed to start for them, which, to be guaranteed to start for a big club, is kind of the dream. I quite liked Matt Turner as a squad player. Understand him moving on, but really liked his story and being an Arsenal fan. It's almost a fairy tale come true. Well, this is the thing, right? I don't think Matt Turner is or ever would have been good enough to start for Arsenal at the level that we're at now. But for him, it's a dream. 18 months ago, he was playing in the MLS. He had a season at Arsenal, his favourite club, his boyhood club. He had a season with them. He played for them. And now he's moving to be a regular starting goalkeeper in the Premier League. It's a win-win. And Arsenal made a bit of profit on him, which is always nice as well. I arrive late and Rory's complimenting Chelsea. Oh dear, close the stream. Yeah, well, won't happen again. But no, I like to try and be objective beyond all of my hatred. But there we go. So yeah, on Kudus, look, we'll see what happens with Kudus. We'll keep monitoring it. I think that injury to Nkunku makes it even more likely he ends up at Chelsea. But we'll see. And now on outgoings, right? So Nuno Tavares. Haven't really seen or heard much. However, Werder Bremen and Wolfsburg have both recently inquired about Nuno Tavares. The Gunners want around 15 million and would prefer a permanent deal for the Portuguese international. Now look, 15 million I think is a bit steep. I don't think he's proven himself to be worth 15 million. And if Arsenal were to go out and pay 15 million for him right now, I'd be like, I'm not sure about that. Because we saw him at Arsenal, we saw him in the Premier League, and don't get me wrong, very young, very raw. His sheer athleticism, that pace and power he's got, I think you can work with. But he had a season at Arsenal, he had game time at Arsenal, and there were parts of his game where you're like, that is really low level. In terms of his final ball, in terms of his kind of IQ. And they're difficult things to teach. He then went and did a season at Marseille. And actually, he did all right at Marseille. He scored quite a few goals. They don't want him. They didn't want to keep him. They didn't even want to loan him for another season. There are questions over his mentality. And so 15 million seems like quite a lot. 15. And so if we hold out for 15 million, I don't think we'll get it, especially from teams like Wolfsburg and Werder Bremen. Again, they don't have... We're talking about Nuno Tavares. They don't have the money. They don't have the money to be spending 15 million on a left wing back, because he's not a left back. He can't play a left back in a back four. And this is the other problem. Where does he play? He can't play left back in a back four. He's an all right left wing back, and he can arguably play off the wing. But if you're going to spend 15 million on a winger, it's not going to be Nuno Tavares. If you're going to spend 15 million on a left back, it's not going to be Nuno Tavares. So that kind of limits you now into just teams that play with 5 at the back. And I just don't think that there are enough of them at a level that they can pay for him. No one else is going to take a punt on him now. Arsenal did that, and it didn't work. So it's one that we're going to end up, I think, probably getting rid of for 7 or 8 million. And it sounds like we want to get rid of him on a permanent deal. So there's no future for him at Arsenal. Thoughts on the third kit? I like the third kit. The third kit's coming out on the 18th of August, for those that are interested. Nicola Pepe. This is coming from Ryan Taylor. There's been lots of talks about Pepe going to Besiktas. And Ryan Taylor said Nicola Pepe's representatives have so far struggled to entice Arsenal into a mutual termination of his contract. Besiktas are prepared to explore alternative targets if Pepe's agency, LF360, fail to deliver on their promise of freeing up the player from the final year of his contract. So Besiktas want Pepe on a free. By getting him on a free, they can pay him closer to the wages that he'll want. Arsenal and Pepe's agency are struggling to come to a deal where he becomes a free agent because his agency want us to pay him out of his contract, which would be about 7.5 million quid, and Arsenal don't want to do that. So they'll come to some sort of agreement probably where we pay him 2, 3, 4 million quid to leave. So we still save a few million on what would be his contract next season. He gets to go for free. Besiktas get to pay him the wages or closer to the wages that he wants, and everyone wins. But his agency are basically just trying to get more money, which, fair enough. It's their job. Rory, have you seen Reece James is now Chelsea captain? Yeah, a couple of people have said that. It's an interesting... Does Reece James strike you as a captain? That's the question. Let me know in the chat. Does Reece James... You know certain players, you're like, that's a captain. That's a leader. Does Reece James strike you as that sort of person? And I don't know the answer. I'm not asking that in a kind of derogatory way. If Pepe wants to leave on a free, he should do what Willian did and leave for free. He should. Yeah, Willian did us a favour by doing that. Willian did us a favour. I feel like some fans just like him as a captain because of that. I say no tweet. See, yeah, that's the thing. That whole the sort of proper Chelsea thing. Does that actually help the team on the pitch? No, is the answer in my opinion. But Thiago Silva is still at the club because he's a leader. Yeah, the thing with Thiago Silva is if you make him captain, you need to change the captain again in like a year or 2 years' time. So I get that it makes sense for the long term. And the thing is, who else do you give it to? Half the players in the squad have only been there for a year. Half of them are still learning English, so it is quite difficult. I'd imagine it might have gone to Mason Mount if he had still been there. Rory, do you fancy our style of pressing, or should we be more aggressive? I think I think we are quite aggressive. I do think we are quite aggressive in the press. Generally speaking, I don't think Havertz was as aggressive as Jesus would have been against Man City, but generally speaking, our press is quite aggressive. Rory, what's happened to Thiago Silva? Haven't seen him in ages. I don't know actually. I don't know. Is the honest answer. I thought he played a bit in pre-season. I'm certain I saw him a bit in pre-season, but maybe not. If I didn't know Ødegaard captained Norway, I wouldn't have said he'd be Arsenal's next captain. Well, that's the thing, right? So, like, this is what I'm talking about in terms of what kind of gives off the impression of being a captain. So, for example, if you took Declan Rice and Martin Ødegaard, you'd say Declan Rice is your captain. That's kind of the image you have of a captain. But Ødegaard is more of a captain by example. Like, he sets an immaculate example to the rest of the team. And as long as you've got the players like Declan Rice, Gabriel is a massive leader. As long as you've got those players around, I think it's okay. And that's why I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that Reece James is the captain if he leads by example. The other questionable thing is, because he's so injury prone, how often is your captain going to be actually playing? You see Lee Mason. Yeah, we'll talk about Lee Mason in a bit. I have seen about that. Anyway, so that's Pepe. So we need to find an agreement that he's going to go. We want rid, and it's just about how much it's going to cost us. But when you really think about it, right, so far, Nicola Pepe has cost us, and I say so far, that 72 million we've still not even paid off yet, because that was an instalment. So we still owe some of that 72 million. But if you say the 72 million, and then he's been on £7.5 million a year for 4 years, so that's another 30 million in wages, plus potentially another 7 million. So he's already set us back £102 million. And he's trying to squeeze out another 3 or 4 million to leave. It is the worst deal in Arsenal history. It is the worst. I don't think he's the biggest flop in Premier League history or anything like that, but in terms of Arsenal's deals, it's the worst deal in Arsenal history. Following Balogun, Fabrizio Romano, AS Monaco are really pushing for following Balogun now after Briel and Bolo's ACL injury. The American is listening to both Inter Milan and Monaco. I know Italian outlets think that Inter Milan are leading the race because they've got Champions League football, but equally Monaco, Balogun's already done a season in France. He's more adapted to France, so they kind of have a bit of an advantage there. And then Fabrice Hawkins, who's a really reliable source in France. Arsenal have turned down an offer worth nearly 40 million euros from AS Monaco for striker Balogun. The AS Monaco hierarchy will return with another offer, with an agreement in principle on personal terms already in place. So Balogun has agreed personal terms in principle with Monaco. I think he's also done the same with Inter. To be honest, I think he's agreeing personal terms with everyone. I just think he wants to leave. But again, it's good that those two clubs are battling out for him. And look, Arsenal are going to hold out. And I do think we'll get at least 40 million quid. So it's not too bad. Alfie said, big up. When I was first on your lives, it was 10 views, couple of months, now nearly 200. I know, it's crazy. And honestly, I massively appreciate it. Look, the growth has been amazing. And those of you that turn up day in, day out, every other day, once a week, I do massively appreciate it. And the fact that like the chat flows quickly, the fact I can't even read all of the chats, it's crazy to me, and I do massively appreciate it. I've always liked Monaco as a team. We'll love them even more if they take flow, as long as they pay the right amount of money for it. As long as they pay the right amount of money. I hope Spurs reject Kane, leaving and Bayern enter the race for Balogun. Well, that's Bayern. I don't think Bayern would enter the race for Balogun. They've got a lot of money, and they haven't been able to spend it yet. They tried spending 100 million on Rice, failed. They've tried spending 100 million on Kane, failed. They tried spending whatever on Raya, failed. To be honest, I'm not sure I've seen a more embarrassing transfer window than Bayern's this window. And there's a difference there between like good or bad window, as in you can make some awful signings, but just the sheer like humiliation. Everyone they've been in for, they failed to get. And currently, again, we're a week out from the start of the season. They need a keeper, they need a striker. They need a right back. it's been embarrassing. Even Kyle Walker, they were in for Kyle Walker, and he basically used them just to get a new contract at Man City and a better contract. So it's crazy. Love the growth, but makes it harder for Guess the Gooner. Yeah, Guess the Gooner back in the day just used to be between the top 5 was just the 5 people watching back in the day on Guess the Gooner. Balogun and Ben Yedder, the ratness. Yeah, I don't like to say this, but is Nico leaving? Yeah, Pepe's leaving. Yeah. 100%. What do you think of Benjamin Pavard to United? It's not a bad signing. It's not the sort of signing that I'm like blown away by. He's a decent player. It's to be honest, right? It's on a similar level to Marcel Sabitzer going on loan in January. Like, it's not a level raiser, I don't think, but it's a solid player. And they did have a slight lack of depth defensively last year, so not a bad signing for them. So yeah, Lee Mason. I wanted to talk about this now. Lee Mason should be a name that's on like if you ever had like a list of people you just despise, Lee Mason's on that list. He's on my list, right? If you don't remember or you don't recognize the name, he was the referee that was on VAR and didn't give the offside against Brentford. The blatant offside, forgot to draw the line. Now, and I think he was also on VAR when Martinelli's goal against Man United at Old Trafford was disallowed, and it later came out he shouldn't have intervened on that either. So he was suspended after that Brentford drama, rightfully so, and then he stepped down. So effectively, he was fired. Also, we thought, but no. That's not how PGMOL works. In the rest of the world, if you made a cock-up the size of Lee Mason's at your job, you'd be fired. You'd be dismissed. And you wouldn't be coming back. And but no, PGMOL, where it's jobs for mates, and it absolutely stinks, and if you're bald, you've got a 50% better chance of getting a job than if you've got hair. He's back. Not only is he back, that would be bad enough. Phasing him back in as a referee, that would be bad enough. But no. Lee Mason's now training referees. Lee Mason is now going to train new referees. So it's actually not just that he's been brought back, he's effectively been promoted. It's like, at work, you do a job, and at first you arrive at a job, and at first you start as you're underneath someone, you have a manager, you have someone that trains you and develops you, and then eventually you become the trainer. That's now Lee Mason. What's the point? What is the lesson number one? What are they going to do? Imagine you walk into a class. I don't know if this is how it works, admittedly, but imagine if you walk into a classroom, right? And first of all, Lee Mason stood at the front. You go, oh, for God's sake, what is he doing here? And you sit down in your chair, and he gets up there on the whiteboard, and he goes, welcome to lesson 1 with Lee Mason on how to be a referee. Please open your textbooks to page 1, chapter 1, how to screw Arsenal over and get away with it. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. And then, on top of that, so you've now got these referees that have been taught by Lee Mason come in and start refereeing and make the same ridiculous mistakes that he makes and the same ridiculous mistakes that the rest of the referees make. And then if you have any emotional reaction to it on the sideline, if you're a manager, or on the pitch if you're a player, this season especially, if you have any emotional reaction to it, you get booked for it. So they could make horrific mistakes and get promoted, and if you call them out on their mistakes, you get booked for it. It's an absolute shambles. It is an absolute shambles. Rory, you have to admit, it's not just Arsenal. Everyone gets bad referee decisions, but it only seems to be us who cry about it for months and months afterwards. Well, I don't have to admit anything, mate. Just because you tell me to. I don't have to admit a thing. And objectively, Arsenal get worse decisions than other clubs. Objectively, last season, there were 7 mistakes that were highlighted by PGMOL as mistakes that shouldn't have happened. And 2 of those were Arsenal. Now, Brighton also were massively on the receiving end of it. So I'm not saying it's just Arsenal, but Arsenal are more harshly done by referees. And also, if you dig into statistics about bookings per foul, red cards per foul, red cards per, Arsenal lead the way on all of them, and it's weird. It is weird, and I don't even think it's deliberate, right? I don't think the referees sit there and go, "I'm going to screw over Arsenal," but I think there is an unconscious bias among a lot of referees, and bear in mind, almost all of the referees in the Premier League are from up north, and if you speak to people up north, they hate Arsenal. They hate the Southerners, the Londoners. They hate them. And I do think, and also all of them grew up in an era where it was Man United versus Arsenal. And I do. I think there's an unconscious bias there. And there are so many examples that you can look back to where you're like, how was that a thing? Remember when Martinelli got booked twice in the same phase of play? That was a rule that was implemented once. The only player that's ever been sent off in the Premier League for 2 bookings in the same phase of play. And then it never happened again. It's a problem. It's a problem. Very fan of every club would think refs have a bias against them. Yeah, they would. But there's a difference between thinking that they do and objectively and statistically they do. That's the difference. You're correct that every fan thinks that the refs are against them, but not every fan can actually pull out data that backs it up. Refs in general are shocking. I agree with that. Look, I'm not just saying it's an Arsenal thing. There is a genuine issue with just the general standard of refereeing in the country. Why have I never seen a black ref in the Prem? Because it's mates' rates, it's jobs for mates, and all of them are from areas of the country which are massively predominantly white. That is the truth. If you look at where these referees are from, there was not a single Premier League referee last year from London. How crazy is that? And again, it's an issue. David Raya on 700k a week, according to Build, once Arsenal completes the deal. Build have been unbelievable. But yeah, I don't actually know what Raya's on. It will be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see if Raya's on more than Ramsdale. He's got a longer contract, but it will be interesting to see if he's on more than Ramsdale. People are stupid if they don't think the refs don't have an agenda against us. There you go. And I'm not saying it's an intentional agenda, but it could be subconscious. And then finally, I wanted to talk about this Lucas Paqueta to Man City deal. Obviously, it's an interesting deal. It's funny, right? It is funny that West Ham, for weeks and weeks and weeks, were begging Man City to buy Declan Rice. They were on their... In the most bizarre way, if you actually think about it, you've got fans of a team begging Man City to buy their best player and creating these Westchester City things and all the rest of it. It's just bizarre behaviour. And City didn't buy Declan Rice, but now they are back in for Lucas Paqueta, who is now arguably West Ham's best player. So it's quite funny. It's an interesting signing for Man City. I was actually looking at the Man City squad at the weekend, right? And in terms of midfield and attack, Man City weren't missing a single player. Every midfield or attacking player that Man City have, senior player, was in the squad. All right, De Bruyne was on the bench. He'd normally start. But actually, if you look at it, it's like basically only Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, if you count him as a senior player, Calvin Phillips, who's a CDM, and it will be Alvarez, not De Bruyne, on the bench. And beyond that, it's all just defenders and youth players. So they actually are lacking a bit of depth. Effectively, they've lost Mahrez and Gundogan. Kovacic has come in for Gundogan, and they've had no replacement for Mahrez. So it does make sense to go for a Paqueta. I still think they're lacking a bit of wide depth, but it does make sense to go in for Paqueta. And it's going to be expensive for them. Apparently, they made a verbal offer of 75 million. That was turned down. And when you think about it, West Ham signed Paqueta last summer for 50 million. Did you see enough from Paqueta last season to add another 50, 60, 70% on top of his value? Because I think he looked good, but I think he looked the level of good that you'd expect for 50 million quid. And so, look, I'm not going to doubt Man City's scouting. I'm not going to doubt any of that. But it seems like a lot of money for a player who was also injured quite a bit last season. Rory, thoughts on Calvin Phillips plus cash for Paqueta? Fabrizio has alluded to it. But again, if they do that, which I wouldn't mind that either, because if they do that, their midfield depth is really lacking again. If they do that, then their midfield... who comes in for Rodri? You have to basically move Stones into the midfield at that point. So I genuinely just kind of think Man City need to buy some more players on the whole, because their squad was quite the depth of players they have on the bench is sensational, right? Pretty much every bench player that City have would walk into the starting lineups of 17, 18, 19 other Premier League clubs. But they kind of just don't have that many players anymore. And it is something that could hurt them if they start picking up injuries. Should we sign Bowen if we miss out on Kudus? Not for me. I think for how much it would cost, I don't think he'd be worth it. I already know West Ham United will ask 70 to 90 million for Paqueta. Yeah, probably. And of course, the other thing that happened between Man City and West Ham was that Carlos Borges, who West Ham were on the verge of signing from Man City, ended up getting hijacked and going to Ajax. So the relationship between them is entirely one-sided. Man City just own West Ham, pretty much. Rory, I would sacrifice Arsenal going out in the quarters of the Champions League just to beat United at home 6-0. Can't wait to play them. I personally, I would just take beating United 1-0 at home and winning the Champions League quarterfinals. But United hatred. I'm not going to blame you. Who instead of Kudus? So this is another thing, right? Elise is potentially an option, but he's more of just an out-and-out right winger. And if you don't get him, it's one of those where sometimes you can turn around the market. Arsenal don't need desperately another player right now, especially when we haven't got players out the door. Like, our squad is stacked. I don't look around the market and see that many options this summer that I think would be worth it. Like Kudus, for me, even if we don't 100% need him this season, go out and get him whilst he's available. There aren't that many other players actually right now on the market that I think Arsenal should go out and get. And in that situation, you don't go out and buy a player, in my opinion. Buendia is a shout. Yeah, maybe. I don't really know what's happening with him at Villa. Is he not in Villa's plans? Did we go back down from the Brazil player from Grêmio? Did we back down from it? No, I don't know what's happening with that. Bitello from Grêmio, I'm not entirely sure what's happening with that at the moment. Anyway, it is time for Guess the Gooner, the game where I give you an ex or current Arsenal player's career path, minus the Arsenal part of it, and you have to guess who that player is. First person to get it correct in the YouTube chat gets the immense pride, the immense respect of the Rory Talks football community and the wider footballing community. So get your fingers on your keyboards, ready for that speed typing. If you're on TikTok and you want to get involved, my YouTube is linked in the Instagram icon of my profile. Get over here. Subscribe if you're new. There's 230 of you in the YouTube stream. Please do subscribe if you're not already. We're live daily, every day at 5. And let's get into the players. So, this ex or current Arsenal player started their career at Sao Paulo. They went to Sevilla. They went to Real Madrid. They went to AS Roma. They went to Malaga. They went to Cruzeiro. They went to Orlando. And they went to CFR Cluj. Sao Paulo, Sevilla, Real Madrid, AS Roma, Malaga, Cruzeiro, Orlando, and CFR Cluj. And someone has got it. I saw the name. Where was it? Lots of people saying Podolski, not Podolski. Not Mertesacker, not Kanu, not Willian. The Brazil shouts are good because obviously he started at Sao Paulo. And it is Jake Matterford that has got it correct. It was Julio Baptista, who was at Arsenal for 1 season. He was actually on loan at Arsenal from Real Madrid for 1 season. So it was a tricky one in 2006. And there you go, Julio Baptista. Max Evans was second. Jim Bob was third. Gilberto Silva, not a bad option. Ram Ahuja was fourth. And who was fifth? VV Vlad was fifth. So there you go. Jake Matterford got it correct. Julio Baptista, a tricky one. A tricky one for sure. He was on loan at Arsenal from Real Madrid in the 2006-2007 season. So there you go. I remember he had a great game against... he had a great game in the FA Cup against... Or was it the League Cup? Against Liverpool. 4 goals in a single game at Anfield. which was superb. Of course, only ever replicated by one Andrei Arshavin. So there you go. And now on to today's guest, the non-Gooner. This is a player who does not and has not played for Arsenal. I'll give you their full career path, and you have to guess who it is. So this player started at FC Utrecht. They went to Feyenoord. They went to Liverpool. They went to Fenerbahce. They went to Feyenoord. And they went to Quick Boys. So that's Utrecht, Feyenoord, Liverpool, Fenerbahce, Feyenoord, Quick Boys. Quick Boys. And we've got the correct answer in the chat. And it is the man, Ross Lorman. There you go. It was indeed Dirk Kuyt. Ross Lorman was first. Drakkar was second. Jake Madaford was third. Jim Bob was fourth. And William Saliba with the Community Shield was fifth. So there you go. Congratulations to our winners. Lots of you getting Dirk Kuyt, of course. What a player. What a player. I did actually used to like watching Dirk Kuyt. So fair play. Congratulations to Ross Lorman and Jake Madaford. Today's Guess the Gooner and Guess the Non-Gooner winners. Get your questions in the chat. We've got about 10 minutes to go on the stream. Get some questions in for me. And we will carry on. We will carry on. In terms of other players that we've not mentioned today, other potential outgoings or other players that we need to get rid of today, well, not today, but as it stands, Cedric, not a lot of interest. Rob Holding, not a lot of interest. Sambi Lokonga to Burnley is still floating around. They're still trying to figure out the terms of a deal that works for everyone in terms of... It's probably going to be a loan with an option to buy, potentially an obligation to buy. But we'll see. Rory, are you going to every home game? I'm going to try, but it is looking very, very difficult. It's looking very, very difficult with the way it stands. The ticket exchange is not active at all. So I am concerned. I am concerned. But yeah, you've got Cedric, you've got Holding, you've got El Neni. What's happening with him? There was a thing here. Luton Town are interested in signing Arsenal defender Rob Holding, who's available for $6 million. Cedric is wanted by certain PL and La Liga clubs. Starting midfield for Saturday, I'd go Partey, Ødegaard, Havertz. It's a really tricky one, you know, because I'm convinced that we don't need Partey, Rice both playing against a Nottingham Forest. I don't think we need it. But I kind of think Arteta's going to do it. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, actually, if it's the same starting lineup that played the Community Shield game. And that's not based on what I think would be the best team to play against Forest. That's based on Mikel Arteta and thinking about the way that Arteta does things a lot. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes for the same starting lineup that played in the Community Shield. What would personally be my starting 11? It would be Ramsdale in goal, the same back four with White at right back, Timber at left back. It would be Rice, Havertz, Ødegaard, Saka, Trossard, Martinelli. And the reason, and I'm not saying I would drop Thomas Partey. Lots of people, when I say Rice, Havertz, Ødegaard, think that I'm dropping Thomas Partey forever. I wouldn't. I just don't think you need to play Thomas Partey every game. And I think at home against Forest, if there are going to be games where you want Rice and Havertz to play together, to learn how to play together, if that's going to be a long-term solution, Forest at home is a good game to give them a try. Rory, have I missed anything? The entire show, Tom. Just the entire show, including Guess the Gooner. I am sorry, you've missed the whole show. Is there renewed interest in Partey? Actually, yeah, there was. I forgot to write that down. And it made me chuckle when I saw it this morning, right? So, according to Dimarzio, who is the biggest fraud left in terms of big football in the nose on Twitter or in the world, obviously you've got your Fabrizios, you've got your David Ornsteins. Ornstein's obviously more of a proper journalist. Di Marzio is the biggest fraud that's still kicking that's got a big account, right? He has nothing left in terms of contacts. He grew on Pogba to United, those sorts of deals, because he did have an in. He was the only big journalist that was pumping out this the fact that Rice to City was virtually done. He got it wrong. According to him, so again, take it with an entire handful of salt. Juventus talked to Partey and his agents a month ago, and again in recent days. Juventus want him, and will focus on Thomas if they sell Zakaria to Monaco. The player is not blocked from Juventus, and this is the funny part. They know if they want him, they can get him. No, Juventus. That's not how it works. Learn your place in the pecking order. You are Juventus. You do not get who you want. You're not that guy. If Arsenal don't want to get rid of Thomas Partey doesn't go anywhere. And also, Juventus 100% won't have the money because none of the Serie A clubs have the money, which is becoming a big problem. So, yeah, Thomas Partey to Juventus is a rumour. I don't think it's going to happen. And again, if Arteta had any plans to get rid of Thomas Partey this summer, I don't think he'd have started them against Man City. Jorginho news is that he's staying at Arsenal. There was rumours about him going to Besiktas. It's not happening. Yeah, it's not happening. Do you think Timber will be on the bench most of the season? No, I don't. Look, I think Zinchenko has to come back from his injury. And Zinchenko's not had a preseason at all. So I think Timber will start against Forest. And the issue is, if you're Zinchenko, right? The issue for Zinchenko is that the more Timber starts, the more he's probably going to impress Mikel Arteta. And the further into his sort of development at Arsenal he's going to get. And it will become harder and harder for Zinchenko to get back into the team. I do think Zinchenko's good enough to get back into the team. But it's going to be a great battle between the two of them. Or between the three of them, really. Because it includes Ben White. Because if Zinchenko does come back in at left back, then Timber's got a shout to come in at right back. And between all three of them, fantastic competition. Today's guest, the Gooner, was Julio Baptista. And guest the non-Gooner was Dirk Kuyt. Play Nwaneri over Partey. Nwaneri is not a 6 in any way, shape or form. And he's 16 years old. We've started to underrate Zinni. I mean, don't put me in that category. I think Zinchenko at his best is one of the most important players we have. I think the only reason we were where we were last season was because of Zinchenko. And I think even now you see when we don't have Zinchenko, we don't have the level of midfield control that we have when we have Zinchenko. So 100%, I still think he's a crucial player for Arsenal. It's just that Timber is very, very, very good. Any update on Mohamed Kudus? No, the only thing really on Kudus is the fact that he's quite scared of going to Brighton if he doesn't have a release clause in place. So Brighton don't want to give him a release clause. He wants a release clause because of what's happening with Caicedo. If you could have one of the transfers for Arsenal that another club has made this summer, who would it be? So a player that another club signed this summer that I would want to Arsenal. Do you know what? 2 of them haven't happened yet. One would be Caicedo, but it hasn't happened yet. And one would be Kudus, but it hasn't happened yet. I suppose Moussa Diaby. To Aston Villa. He would have been a fantastic backup to Saka. So Moussa Diaby. And you've got to think, if he's going to Aston Villa, we could have been in there. Obviously, I'm talking realistic. Yeah. Chow Tao is correct in that Jude Bellingham would, of course, be the number 1 if that had ever been an option. Sorry if I missed it, but how much do you buy your Arsenal tickets for? I've never bought a ticket on the resale market. I've never bought a ticket on resale. They go for ridiculous amounts of money, and I refuse to do it. It's also almost impossible to sell it's basically impossible to sell a ticket on resale now, because Arsenal tickets now. You know, on your phone, when you use Apple Pay or you get a card up on your wallet on your phone and you have to hold it near the reader, that's how Arsenal tickets work now. And there's no way of sending those to other people. So if you're on Twitter or something and you think you're going to buy a ticket off someone, they're scamming you. Almost like 99.9% certain that they're scamming you. So there we go. If we sell Tierney and Holding, we will only have 7 defenders who play, and 3 of the 7 are injury risks, with Tommy, Saliba, and Zinchenko. We can't sell Tierney, in my opinion. I kind of see what you're saying, but equally, I don't think Saliba's a massive injury risk anyway. I think it was a freak back injury. Other than that, his injury record's very clean. Maybe you need one more defender, but I'd also say, in the worst case scenario, let's say Saliba, Tommy, and Zinchenko are all out, right? You've still got a back four of White, Timber, Gabriel, Kivior. So you've still got a solid back four. You've also got Ruel Walters. And that's where I'd start looking at the development side of things, where if you go through a massive injury crisis, which having Zinchenko, Saliba, and Tomiyasu all out would be, I think any reasonable club at that point starts relying on youth players and academy players. How much do you pay then? It depends on the game. So Arsenal games are split into 3 categories: Cat A, Cat B, Cat C, depending on the opposition. So anyone inside the top 6 or 7 is Cat A, which are the most expensive. So they normally cost anywhere between 60 and 100 quid. Cat C, which is against the kind of, small relegation teams that aren't from London, you can get a ticket for 30, 35 quid. At United, you can screenshot the barcode on Apple Wallet. So there's no barcode. It's more like, when you actually go to physically pay something with your phone, like on a card reader, when you actually physically have to move your phone to the card reader. It's like that. So you can't even send it, because last season, you could send a screenshot of the QR code and do it that way. They've got rid of that. I've been paying between 120 and 150 per ticket. Yeah, that's crazy. I paid that for the Tottenham game last season, but that was it. I paid 240 quid for the Tottenham ticket last season, but that was club level. Bougie. Rory, please mention me. Naval, there you go. You're on screen. Enjoy the attention. Rory, it's called NFC, Near Field Communication. There you go. It's NFC. What's your take on the striker situation? I think we're fine. I would love potentially to sign someone like Ivan Toney. And if you were going to do it, I'd do it now. But I think we're fine. I think we sell Balogun. I don't think we end up selling Nketiah this window just because of Jesus. And that'll be it. I think we're fine. Long term, I think next summer I could see us going in for a new number 9. But I don't think it's an issue right now. Anyway, that is going to be the end of the stream. It's been quite a long one. I massively appreciate all of you that have tuned in. I mean, we peaked at nearly 250. Unbelievable. Please do subscribe if you're not already. Have a fantastic evening, as always. I'll be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And other than that, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.